Great, it's great to be here. You have to bear with me, I'm not used to using a laptop on here, but I wasn't organised enough to print off before I left home. In fact, I stopped off on the way down to finish off my talk, preparing my talk. It's been a busy week at the Message. We've got this weekend, we've had a conference on at the Message headquarters, and we've also had at the same time a youth conference running over the weekend. So I left there yesterday to come down, and I have to say Carolyn's hospitality is second to none. Sometimes I've heard stories of people going to speak at churches and staying with somebody and it's a nightmare, and they're like, I just need my space, and I just like, it was awful, and I can't say that. To be honest, I'm going home today wishing I was staying longer. It's been really amazing. So thank you, Carolyn, for having me. It's been great. It's great to be with you. And it's been a while since I've been talking. Initially, I was talking to Louisa during lockdown. I think she called the Message and I had the reception phone coming through to my mobile. I had many interesting calls over that time. But one of them was Louisa, and we got chatting about the Message, and I got to share some stories with her, and then Carolyn became the mission person, and I moved on to talk to Carolyn, and I've been able to welcome her up to the Message a couple of times. So it's great to be with you and to be sharing with you. It's been a bit of a crazy season, like I've mentioned. Now, the Message has been going for 30 years and started with one person, Andy Hawthorne, who had a vision to reach people, particularly young people. Over the 30 years, lots have changed. You know, one of our touchstone scriptures is, see, I'm doing a new thing. Do you not perceive it? And so we're a charity that doesn't just keep going with what we're doing, but when we see what God's doing, when we see the new thing, we say, actually, is God calling us to step into something else? You know, Louisa mentioned before about her friend and inviting a friend to church. And I wonder, after a conversation with Louisa, a conversation with Carolyn, whether that pet service might be a way to get Louisa's friend into church. Who knows? But it's to see him doing a new thing. What is God doing next? And as the Message, we don't stand still. And it's where some of my grey hairs have come from. It's where the bags under my eyes have come from, because it's been a busy season. But to try and sort of tell you very quickly what we do, we put it into 4 different areas. The first one would be creative mission. And that is our bands that go into schools, prisons and tough communities, sharing Jesus through music. We have a number of bands that go in and do schools weeks and then end of week gigs and always present the gospel to young people. We also have schools workers and schools teams that go in doing PHSE lessons, and at the moment No More Knives tours, where they go into schools and teach about living life without a knife and laying down knives. We have training and equipping, which is our year-out programme for students. We've extended it, so it's now 17 to well, actually, I don't know if there's an upper age bracket now, but the oldest, I think, is 37 on that. So we've changed that slightly the last couple of years. That's a Message School of Evangelism, where people come and they're trained up to go out on mission practically. We also have our advanced groups, which Andy started about 8 years ago with 12 guys in his office. What he thought was, actually, I'm getting a little bit older. Am I passing on enough of what I've learned over the years? And so he gathered a group of 12 younger men, and he met him in his office, and he began to invest into them. But then he said to them, you go out and you invest into others that are surrounding you. Let's make sure we're multiplying the gift of the evangelist. We're keeping each other accountable to go out and share the gospel and actually call for a response. You know, often when people don't share the faith, it's because they're not confident in what they're sharing. And so these advanced groups teach people how to share their faith relevantly in their context. Those advanced groups started as multiplying groups with 12 guys in an office, one group. We're now in 92 nations of the world, advanced groups all over, of people in all different countries, places that would never normally be doing this sort of thing. There's lots of travel goes on. We've been employing people in country to facilitate these groups, people who know the context of their country and know how to do it in their countries. It's been amazing to see the growth of that. We've got our Christ-centred enterprise, which is our enterprises up and down the country in England. Most of them are in Manchester, building teams, cafe teams. We used to have a hairdressers and a bike shop. We've changed those now. We've got community groceries up and down the UK where we can employ ex-offenders or people who would struggle to get employment elsewhere. We've got asylum seekers that are working for us now in a full-time paid jobs. But it's where what we saw is our prisons workers were going into prison. And when the guys and girls that they connected with were coming out of prison, they'd come to faith in prison, but when they'd come out with little money, nowhere to live, and they'd ended up back in a life of crime. And so we decided that we needed to do something about it. And so we set up the Enterprise Centre, where we employ them on a 2-year programme. They go on an MVQ, they get a mentor, and they get all the support of the charity. And where the national youth offending rate, I think last time I looked, was something like 44% re-offend and go back to prison. Our percentage currently is at 3% because a lot of it is about community and people finding community. And finally, community transformation is the fourth area that we would work in. And that is we have our youth buses that go out into communities and build youth groups. We go out and we send the bus for like 12 weeks to a local church into the estate. And we say, actually, will you send your workers, your children's workers, your youth workers, and we'll work with them. And we invite the young people to come on the bus. And what we find is after 12 weeks of coming to the bus, relationships have been built with the church people, which means that youth groups can be started because a lot of it is about relationship. We have Eden teams up and down the country. I'm on one of them in Wythenshawe. We always go into the most deprived areas of the UK. And basically, we go into the deprived areas in partnership with the local church, and we send people. So I'm not from Wythenshawe. I moved into Wythenshawe to become part of the Eden team. We have people on our Eden team that are born and bred in Wythenshawe, and we have people on our team who used to live in Wythenshawe and desperately wanted to get out and have now come back because they realise that God's calling them back to the place where they used to live. And in those areas, we will support people, support the people who are marginalised, who don't know how to claim what they need to claim, who maybe don't have the wisdom that we would have. Not saying we have loads of wisdom, but you know what I mean. We can speak into people's lives and we can really journey with people long term, not just popping in, but long term living in those areas. One of the most recent things we've done and one of the most exciting things we've done over my time is our community groceries. Now, loads of people during lockdown did food deliveries. And we did too. We started off with who are the children who were on free school meals? And we adopted families. So I had 3 families with 9 children between them, and I would go to Aldi at the end of the week and I would pack my trolley, and I got the dirty looks because I was buying all the bread. You know, when the shortages of everything, and I'm there with 9 loaves of bread and 9 packs of ham and 9 packs of apples, and I would go and I would shop for these 9 families. And I got very good at packing the bags as I went along. And that's some skill when it comes to Aldi. And I would drop them off at people's houses. We then decided that when we could open the kitchen to some degree, we would send our chefs back in to cook evening meals, and we connected with even more people. And we delivered over that time about 60,000 hot meals. When I say hot, meals packaged ready for your evening meal. And on every meal that we packaged, we put a Bible verse. And then we'd go to the door, and often families would start talking when we went back. That Bible verse, do you know what was happening that day when I picked that up and I read that, and it came just at the right time, and conversations began, and we began to really connect with these families. And we found that actually these families weren't just in need of food, but were in need of support and in need of friendship. And we started to look, as we began to come back after lockdown, we started to think, actually, we've not got the capacity to continue to deliver meals all around Wythenshawe. Our staff have got jobs to do. At one point, it was me on a Monday morning. I would pack up my freezer packs in my car and I would go and help with deliveries. But workload came back. And also we decided that long term, it wasn't a solution. What we didn't want is people becoming so dependent that they were waiting for someone to drop food off at the door. But actually, how did we work with them long term? Because the need wasn't going anywhere. And that was where the community grocery was birthed. And I remember Andy going away for a month sabbatical, and he said to us, when I come back, we're going to be ready to go with the community grocery. So he left us with the work of setting up this shop. So what we did is, because at the time hairdressing was really hard, And the 2 trainee hairdressers that we were working with were both weren't allowed to work because they were part of the Windrush stuff that was going on, and they weren't allowed to work. So we closed down the hairdressers and we set up the community grocery. I think you can see a little bit of that on there. And we set it up ready to launch in the September. And the way it works is that members come and they join for £5 for a year. And they pay the £5 annual membership, and that gets them access now to 5 shops a week for £4 a shop. Each shop is worth about £25, £30, depending on where we've got the stock from. Much of our stock now is purchased because surplus food supply has gone down, cost of food's gone up. We are buying more food than we expected to buy, but we're seeing an incredible difference being made. So they get access to the shop 5 times a week and all the support courses that are run by the local church. The access to the support courses isn't just for them, it's for their whole families. Now, we set out to launch 1 community grocery, and then we got funding that said that we could launch another 5 before the end of March. It didn't come in until the end of December, and we had 3 months to launch 5. 3 months to spend the money, or we had to give the money back, and there was no way the Message Trust was giving any money back. And so we launched 5 more groceries by the end of March. And so suddenly it became a bit of a different thing than we originally set out for. And we now have just, on Tuesday, we launched number 22. And we are looking at supporting 44,000 members, all representing a family. It's been incredible growth. And the reason we've not stopped is because we've not just seen incredible growth of groceries and people in need, but we've seen incredible salvation, like right across the groceries. I mean, our first site in Wythenshawe, we, within the first 8 months, we'd seen, church wasn't open, it was still during COVID and we weren't allowed to open. But within the first 8 months, we'd seen 200 people make decisions for Jesus in the shop, around the shop, just through conversations. Now, we didn't know how many of them would convert to go into church, but they were all asking, when's church, when's church? And there was a church that met at our site. In fact, some of you will know Anthony Delaney, the Ivy Church, met at our site. And we were talking to them about what does it look like if all these people come to your church. Like, we're pointing them to your church because that's a church that's on site. We all go to different churches. The Message will never plant a church. And then Ivy came to us and they said, actually, we feel that God's saying about this new model and we're not going to be coming back to site. And suddenly everything changed because suddenly we'd been promising these people a church and then we didn't have a church to give to them. And we sat down, myself and Andy and Sam in Andy's office and in Sam's office, and we sat down and we said, what are we going to do? Like, we can't, we could point them to other churches around the area, but they've got used to this site. They've become comfortable with where they're coming here. We could, ask a church to come and plant here, but will they plant the type of church that these people need? Or do we need to never say never to God? And do we need to take, we'll never plant a church off the vision statement? And do we need to do what we feel God's doing right now and plant a church? And I can't tell you the level of spiritual excitement I felt. I've never felt it before in my life. As we sat there and we said, we need to be obedient. We need to plant a church and we need to disciple these people. If we don't, I don't think we're doing the right thing. And there and then in May 2021, we decided to launch a church. It's all good fun, they said. We had 2 months to get all the safeguarding ready and all the database ready and everything ready, and you know whose job that was. But it's been an incredible journey and we have seen God do so much. We started in July 2021 and about 140 people turned up. And we didn't know if anyone would turn up because we deal with people who aren't reliable a lot of the time. And 140 people turned up. We now have an average of 250 people a week. 80% of them are brand new to church from the local council estate. Such a wide variety of people and cultures. It's incredible to see, and every week we're seeing people come to faith. Every month we're seeing people baptised. I've got baptism service next week, and it's just been amazing. I'll just tell a few stories before I move on, but we've got a guy called Andrew who came to the grocery to bring his gran. He's his carer for his gran. Came to the grocery to bring his gran, and he said he went away and he couldn't help thinking back to the way he felt when he was in there. And so he came back and he said he ran back to ask if he could volunteer. And he started to volunteer with us. A few months ago, he put a Facebook status on, because Andrew then went on to come to the church when it launched, gave his life to Jesus, got baptised, he's become part of the Eden team. And he put a status on Facebook a couple of months ago, and he just said, I came into this place broken and still on drugs. And now I've just been employed by them, and my life has changed drastically. And I employed Andrew into a corporate partnerships role in January, and he's now working on my team, and he's just, the difference in him is just incredible. Sam, there's a lady called Sam who came to us, and she was that low. She's a lady who's got a congenital heart condition, but is waiting for a transplant. And she came to us in about February 2021. And she was that low that she'd taken herself off the heart transplant list because she said it's a waste of a heart. Her partner had jumped off a bridge a month before, and she was a picture of depression. Lovely, lovely lady. I think she was 39 at the time. And so she took herself off the heart transplant list, and she comes in, and we ask her if she wants to start volunteering. So she starts volunteering one day a week. She tells us that that's the only day she gets out of bed. It's the thing that gives her life, is coming in to volunteer. And so we say to her, why don't you come in more? So she starts to come in more. Before you know it, countenance is lifted. And she's volunteering every day, 5 days a week when we're open. She then comes to the church. She comes to the church. She comes to faith on the first church service. She then books in to get baptised. She's now in Newcastle Hospital because she put herself back on the heart transplant list because she found a hope and she found a reason to live, and she's now waiting for a heart in Newcastle Hospital. I would love it if you would stand with us and pray for her that her heart comes quickly. She's an incredible lady. She's also joined the Eden team and just shows incredible faith as she waits there for this heart. You know, it's a hard situation to be in. We have a young boy called Tyson. Even the name, I think he's named after Tyson Fury. Young boy called Tyson who lives on the estate, and from day one, he would come to church on his own. And he'd turn up, and him and his brother would come, and they are wild. I took them to the beach once. They went clean. They came back. My car looked like it was the beach. But I took them to the beach, and it was the first time they'd been to the beach. These young boys come on a Sunday morning on their own, and they come into my office and they say, can we have one of our chats? Can I make you a cup of tea? And can we have one of our chats? And they sit and we have a cup of tea and we chat. Tyson goes out and he knocks on his auntie's door at 8:30 on Sunday morning. He said, Auntie Claire, you've got to come to church. And he drags his auntie and his two cousins to church, and his auntie comes to faith. Tyson's already come to faith. His brother's come to faith because he's invited him. They've both been baptised. His auntie comes to faith. She gets baptised, and one of her boys stood up the other week and he said, this church is like my family. And my dad left when I was a baby. I don't know my dad. But what does Jesus mean to me? He's like my father figure. Like nobody's told this young lad about, you know, nobody's told him to say that. And he just stood there and he said, Jesus is like he knows me. It's like he knows how to connect with me, and it's like having a father. These are lads who are born and bred on the estate, who haven't known church, and God is doing incredible things in their lives. You know, there's brokenness and there's hurt, and, you know, it's not always one direction. We had a lady walk through the door a while back, drunk, and she walked in and she said to me, I've not left my house for 10 years and I've managed to get here today. The only time I left my house is when I put my hood up and ran to the off licence and ran back again. And she came into church and she was shaking and she was scratching. She scratched her arms that much that they were bleeding. And I realised that she grabbed hold of my hand at one point, and I realised that if she was holding my hand, she wasn't scratching. But I can't tell you which directions my arm was going in when the worship was happening, because it was going in directions I didn't think it would go in. As she clenched hold of my hand, how she didn't break my arm, I don't know. And then I had to get up to speak, and I said to Angela, I've got to get up and speak now. I said, but would you do something for me? Would you listen to me? Because I'm going to be speaking to you. And for 15 minutes I spoke, and she sat clasping her hands with tears streaming down her face. And at the end of the service, she gave her life to Jesus. Now, it's not been plain sailing. She's been up and down. She's been baptised. She still struggles, but she's on a journey, and she's back. She's in church every week, and she's on a journey with Jesus. She loves Jesus. She knows he can make a difference despite the battles that she faces. God is doing incredible things. When we signed up to lead a church, what we didn't sign up for, or what we didn't really think about, was the fact that we'd be doing weddings and funerals. I remember getting the first wedding through and sitting down in Andy's office, and we Googled how to do a wedding. It was fun. And then Andy was away, and I got a request for a funeral. And I said, it's midweek, it's when the offices are open, parking's going to be a nightmare. So I checked out with some people, and they said, in the end, we said, yeah, okay, let's do it. This young lad had come to faith, and he was desperate that his dad his dad's funeral was at the church. So we agreed, and then we sat down, and I said, right, okay, we can definitely do it in the church. And they said, but where do the horses go? I said, you didn't tell me about horses. And so we managed to facilitate these horses coming on site, and I stood at the front of the church. And I stood there and I thought, you're all piling in, 200 what looked like gangsters coming into this service. And I stood there and I just thought, you think I know what I'm doing? And I'm just going to pray that God leads me, because I've not got a clue, and you look very scary. And throughout the service, people would jump up. It was just one of them funerals where you had to make split-second decisions all the time. Someone's car was about to get towed away, and somebody jumped up on the stage to say something. And at one point I looked down and I thought, I really need that water, but 4 people have drank from my water. But I thought, if I ask for more, someone at the back was offering me more water, but I thought, if I ask for more water, this family are going to think that I don't want to drink from the same bottle as them. And so in that moment, I decided to go for the spitbacks, and just so that the family would feel loved. But it's been incredible. You know, the 2 funerals we've done, we've seen people come to faith on the back of them, not on the day of the funeral, but weeks later as they've come to church. The second funeral was incredible. I'm not going to tell you the story because I've gone on too long. But the second funeral was incredible, and the daughter rang me afterwards, and she said to me, Danielle, I won't use her words because she swore at me, but she said, Danielle, what on earth is going on? She said, this is not, you don't understand. She said, this is not my family. She said, I've just been after the funeral, and all people are talking about is God and church. All people are talking about is how they want to come to church, how it was different, how they felt something that they've never felt before. God is doing some incredible things. He's at work. He's at work right across this country, I think. I don't believe it's just Manchester. We've seen it across our groceries. Salvation across our groceries has been incredible. Churches who have partnered with us with a grocery have seen their church congregations grow right across the board. Some churches would say their church now consists of more grocery members than it did of members before that. God is doing amazing things. And I've seen an openness in people at the moment, and I think we need to not miss it. You know, Louisa was sharing before about some people she'd had the opportunities to speak to. Often we get scared because people are hardened and they don't want to talk about Jesus and don't want to talk about church. But if you don't take the opportunity now, you're going to miss something, because people are open. After COVID, people are open to hearing about Jesus, and we've seen it right across. So that's where we're at with the message. I hope you're encouraged, because these are your stories. As St Mary's West Horsley, you support us as a charity, and these are your stories that you're hearing. This is without people like you standing with us, we couldn't do what we do. And you'll have the chance this morning, if you want to stand with us as an individual, you have the chance to do that. I forgot my pack, so I'll grab that. This morning, we're giving packs away. We do this as a sort of partnership thing. If you wanted to stand with us this morning as an individual, any amount a month, we don't set a limit on it or anything. Any amount a month, if you sign up with a monthly gift, you'll get one of these bags. They did look like book bags because a man designed them. We've redesigned them, and we've got nice tote bags that I would carry around. And inside here, you'll just receive, as a thank you for standing with us, you'll receive some books. Andy's hardback copy of Andy's new Burning Heart book, which he's quite proud of. It's a great book. Hardbacks only go in the regular giving bags. you'll receive one of them. There's a book about Eden and how Eden, some of our Eden stories from across the network. You can receive one of them. We've also got, what else have we got in here? We Are the Message, which is a book that was written about sort of how we are, who we are as the message, some of our values, some of the things that we look to as the message. And then there's some other bits in there, CD, that I don't know if anyone has a CD player anymore. I certainly don't. But the CD in there. And then there's this book, Grief and Grace. This was written by Tim Tucker, who heads up our South Africa hub. And that is, he lost his wife suddenly through brain aneurysm. She was in her 40. And he wrote this book. And there's also a YouTube videos that go alongside this book. I think I'm in one of them. Episode 2 I'm in. So you can get them for free on YouTube and they go alongside that book. So if this morning you'd like to stand with us, we'd really appreciate it. We're growing really fast. We are, the lifeblood of the message is small regular givers. It's through their support, but not just through the financial support, but we find that when people give, they also pray. And let me tell you, the past couple of years, we really need your prayers. With God doing so much, there's also such a battle going on. And I've experienced it personally, and we've experienced it as a charity. So please, if you can give this morning, but also if you could pray for us, we would so appreciate it. Okay, let's move on. I need to apologise to those that I messed up this morning when I decided last night to shorten the Bible reading. So it's not the tech people that got the wrong verses on there. It was me messing things up. I realised how long it was and I thought we'd make it a little bit shorter. But we read about Moses at the Red Sea. And Moses was here with the Israelites and he had nowhere to go. There was nowhere to escape. Behind him was the sea and in front of him were the Egyptians. Moses, that guy who was so unconfident, so unsure of himself in the past, but he'd seen God perform many miracles. He didn't feel qualified, he was scared, and yet suddenly he found himself in a place where he was telling the Israelites, do not be afraid. Stand firm and you'll see the deliverance the Lord will bring today. The Egyptians you'll never see again. Maybe he didn't say it quite as clearly as that. We hear that Moses had a stutter. You know, maybe he didn't sound as confident as that. Maybe they weren't confident in him. But it's like he's saying, look, stop panicking. I've seen God's faithfulness. I know that God will come through. Let him show himself like he's shown me. The Lord will fight for us. We need to only be still. And I bet they're thinking, what are you talking about, Moses? Like, can you not see the sea behind us? Can you not see this coming towards us? What are you talking about? We can't see any good coming from it. Have you ever been in that place where life throws a curveball, when situations don't feel fixable, when it feels like all around us is turmoil? Well, there's actually no place to turn, because no place that we turn will fix the situation that we're in. Just like Moses, we have a choice to panic and allow anxiety to have a hold, or to be still in the midst of it, still in the midst of despair. That doesn't mean we don't have emotion. It doesn't mean we don't have pain, but it means that we know God has us despite it. Those times when we look to Jesus and allow him to work things out, trusting him and trusting his plan, trusting that he knows the bigger picture, that even when life throws hard stuff at us, he knows. And I don't say that lightly. I've been there myself when life's thrown things that I never expected. Things that I thought only ever happened to other families. And then you find yourself in a place where you're facing stuff and you're like, God, even you can't fix this right now. I've been there where pain is unbearable, but he's been faithful. And I stand here and I'm able to say, you know what, that situation never changed. That pain is still in my heart, but God is faithful. The God of the universe, the King of kings, the Lord of lords, the Alpha and the Omega, the one who knows all and sees all and yet still loves us, knows all our rubbish and still loves us, the one who understands the very depths of who we are. He's the one that fights for us. It's in that place of remembering his goodness and recalling his faithfulness that we allow ourselves to let go and trust the one who knows us, trust the one who knows the bigger picture. One of my favourite Bible chapters and one of my go-to Bible chapters is Psalm 23. And one of my favourite verses in it is verse 5, and it says, "You prepare a table for me in the presence of my enemies." And I love it. I love it because it's in those moments of desperation, in those moments where life throws things at us that we just can't control. It's in those moments that he calls us to sit with him, that he calls us to sit with him and have peace that he offers. Imagine him setting up the table, laying the tablecloth. Come on, hopefully there's a bit of food on there, a bit of cheese, a few grapes. Come and sit with me. All this is going on around you, but you can't fix it. There's nothing you can do. So come and do the one thing that you can do, and come and sit with me, and sit at my table of peace, and sit at my table of grace. And as you sit, and as those around you who don't know me look on, the glory will go to him, because they'll see the peace that he offers. And they'll see that even when we're broken, we're looking to him, and he's giving us peace. Moses was here in that place. He had a chance to show God to be real again. And God was like, "Moses, what are you doing? I've given you what you need." Sometimes we sit back, don't we? And we wait for God to do stuff, and he's going, "I've given it you. Take on the peace that I offer." He said, I imagine God saying to Moses, "You know what to do. Raise the staff. Get ready to go. It's good that you trust in me, and it's good that you're still and at peace because you know I'm faithful. But as you look to me, keep moving forwards. Be still, but don't stand still, because I'm heading this way. Come on, let's go. Come with me." Need patience? Take the patience that he offers us. Need peace? Take the peace that he's already offered us. We don't need to wait for it. He's already given it us. Moses needed not to be anxious about the situation, but to engage in what God was doing in his life right then, listening to him and doing what he was told to do. You know, I read about Moses, and it reminds me of my own life in some ways. So ill-equipped, so nervous, so unconfident that God could use me. And yet when we give ourselves over to God and we say, "God, you know what? This is how I feel, but I want your best for my life. I don't want anything less, and I don't want anything more." At 12 years old, I had a prophecy. I was stood in a church that I went to with my parents, and I was sat in my seat, and I was 12, and I had the word multitudes running around my head. And then this guy called me up to the front. And so this prophecy weighed heavy on me, because he spoke over my life, and he said, "You're going to stand with one with the same call and the same vision, and you're going to see multitudes come to Jesus." And I held on to that prophecy quite lightly. I remember praying even at 12 years old, and I said, "God, if that's from you, then I want you to make the way clear. I'm not pushing for this prophecy. I'm going to remember it, but I'm not going to push for it. Because it's not me. I can't speak. I'm not confident in myself. I'm too bothered about what people think. I don't even know why you're calling me to that. If that's true, then why would you even call me to something like that?" And then a while back, I stood in church, and I thought, "Oh gosh, God, I think this prophecy is coming to pass. We're beginning to see the multitudes come to know you. We're standing in a place and seeing the multitudes, and I believe that we're only at the start. I believe there's so much more to come, and I believe it's not just Wythenshawe, but giving ourselves over to God and saying, "God, you know what? Your plan, nothing more, nothing less." And giving ourselves over to God even when it's uncomfortable. Because believe me, 2 years ago, you put this in my hand and I'd be on the floor. Like, there's no way. I can't do it. God, don't ask me to do that. But I promised God that I would say yes if I was ever asked. And God got my yes, and continues to get my yes, even when it's scary. But it's when we fix our eyes on him and move towards him because he's not in the past. You know, I've got pains of the past, and sometimes you can long for the past, long for the changes. You long for that time when that person was around, or you long for that time when things were different. But he's not in the past. And as painful as that is, he's not there. So I can't go back there because I want to be heading to him. I want to be where he is. He was there with me in the past, but he's moved forwards. His plans and purposes are for now. That's where he's at work, and that's where he longs for us to be. There's a song by Elevation Worship that I was listening to in the car yesterday, and it says, can't go back to the beginning, can't control what tomorrow will bring, but I know here in the middle is the place where you promised to be. That's where he is. Moses chose obedience, freedom, and life. He chose to go with God's best plan above any of his ideas. He chose obedience. What about you today? Where are you at? Consider where I'm at. Maybe there's people in this room that have never put God first. Maybe you come to church. I don't know. Every week in our church we give people a chance to respond, because not everyone has made that decision. You know, maybe this morning you're in church, and maybe you've even come to church for a while, but you've never actually made a decision and said, you know what, Jesus, I need to put you first in my life. I need to know you as my Lord and Saviour. Maybe you've been scared of giving up some stuff, but actually when you give up what you think you're giving it up for something better. Giving up your plans for his far greater plans. I would never have dreamt that I would be doing what I'm doing today. God's plan was so much bigger than mine and so much greater than mine. I'm so glad that I gave up my plans. So maybe this morning, just in this moment before we finish, if there's anyone in this room that's never accepted Jesus, then I want to give the opportunity. So if everyone would just close their eyes, and I'll pray. But if that's you this morning, if you've never put Jesus first in your life, if you've never prayed that prayer to say, you know what, God, I need you, I need my Creator, I need the one who knows me to be first in my life. If that's you this morning, then while everyone's heads are bowed, then I just want you to quickly raise your hand, and I'll know to include you in that prayer. There might not be anyone in this room, but I don't want to miss the opportunity in case there is. So if that's you this morning, we're not going to wait long, but just raise your hand. So maybe this morning you're already a Christian. Maybe you're a Christian, but you've been trying to hold on to your plans. You've never fully handed them over to God because you know best. You know the way to go. You know what God's best is, although you don't, because they're his plans. You know, maybe you've had a prophecy over your life or a promise over your life, but you know what? That promise and that prophecy isn't yours. You don't need to keep a hold of that. That's God's plan and God's purpose over your life. Maybe this morning as I pray, it's time just to hand some stuff over to him. Or maybe it's time to say, God, I want to know you now. I want to know what you want from me now in this stage of my life. You know what? If you're in this church, God's not finished. If you're retired, God's not finished. God's got a plan and purpose for you, and it's now. So let me pray. God, I pray that right now across this room you'll be touching hearts and speaking to people. God, I thank you for the plans and the purposes and the promises that are over each individual life in this room. I thank you that there's not one person sat in this room that there isn't a plan and purpose over their lives. God, I pray that you'll begin to speak to people. And I pray, God, over the coming days and weeks that you'll reveal your plans and purposes, that you'll give opportunities to people that maybe felt like there was no opportunity. God, I thank you that your plans are far greater. And God, this morning we surrender to your greater plans. We find the joy in surrendering to you that brings us greater joy as we work out your plans in our life. God, I pray you'll be with us this week. I pray you'll speak to us this week as we go. In your name, amen.